We are here because we are dedicated to helping the entire CrossFit community. Determined to elevate coaches, box owners, athletes, and everything in between, we believe that this mission will begin right here, right now. While this time and this goal begins with you, our hope is that you take this fire ignited within you and weave it into your own life with the same unrelenting passion to give those you have the privilege of coming in contact with the best hour of their day.
We have a very special episode because this is like, we're going to talk about women and pregnancy and whatnot, but man, back in the day, if you were like, hey, Jay, you're going to be in a conversation with three attractive ladies, I would be like, sign me up. Let's do it. So first rule of all of this is follow your dreams, people. Follow your dreams and, they will come true. Because here I am with Michelle Johnson, Kristen Bernacchi. Did I say that right?
You did.
and Alberta Capanera. Did I say that right?
Yep.
All right. And now let's give a little background. Three amazing women, two currently pregnant, one previously pregnant, right? Two kids. Michelle and I go back at least 10, 12 years now. Michelle, when you first met me at Albany CrossFit, would you be like, wow, this mature guy with a kid, a baby upstairs is talking to us about pregnancy and CrossFit?
Never, Jay. Never will cross the line.
On a 1 to 10, Michelle, how much have I matured since the last time you've seen me?
I'm going to say like a solid 10, Jay.
A 10? Yeah. It's weird, right?
It is weird.
It's weird for me, so I can imagine for you. So before we talk more about pregnancy and, the goal of this, Michelle was telling us right before we hit record, is just to open up that conversation. I agree with you. Obviously, I wasn't pregnant, but my wife was, and seeing just what she went through, all good, don't get me wrong, but it's different, right? It's kind of like, I don't want to say it's an injury. I don't want to say it's adapting, but it's one of those things where in the past, it's like, oh, I'm pregnant. I guess I can't work out. And now we need to be able to be most of our listeners are either coaches or box owners. Like, how do we keep those people not just coming in, because it's so important, I'm sure we'll talk about, but not just physically, but mentally for you ladies to keep training and then also get back into it. But yes. Before that, Michelle, I want to tell your story because, you have a different, your former last name, at least if my memory serves correct, was Mora.
Yes.
And by the way, how's your brother doing?
He's good.
Yeah, I haven't seen him in a while. But now you're Michelle Johnson, and you were telling me that you met your husband at Albany CrossFit.
He's walking away right now laughing. So we reconnected at Fall Face Off. It was my first competition. I was being a judge, and I made you and Kevin swear to me that I would only judge scaled athletes because I was terrified of judging RX athletes. And so next to the lane where I was this sweaty, handsome, tan Asian man with his shirt off. And I was
I thought you were going with me, but then you said Asian. So she's not talking about me.
Sweaty man. And that's where we reconnected. And now we're married and expecting our first baby.
And the cool part of that is, I sold Albany CrossFit, I think in 2013, 8 years ago. And back then, there's probably a half a dozen marriages. You got, Gene and Stacy. I don't know. I can't think of. I'm sure you can. Alyssa and what's her husband's name? Remember Alyssa and Chris? I think her husband's name is.
Yeah.
And but point is, even to this day, and that's the awesome part about owning a box. Like these things trickle down. We started Fall Face Off in probably 2010. 10 years later, you're still meeting someone. That's so awesome. And you coach at a box called CrossFit for the People, owned by Kayla Tote, who was on this podcast as well. Awesome girl who's doing some awesome things in that area. And Kristen, you own Lumberjack. It's an affiliate. What's you go by like a Lumberjack fitness type thing?
Yes, Lumberjack Athletics, but we are CrossFit Luke.
Gotcha. And then Alberta, you own CrossFit Barn Fit.
Barn built. Yep. But we go by
Uh,
barn fit. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense now because I saw
Yeah.
my buddy Chris Anderson posting his
Yeah.
qualify or open results, and I was like, where is he? And I didn't realize that was a local box as well.
Yeah. So he did a couple of the workouts at our place, and we judged him and stuff like that.
That's so cool. So it's just, years ago, I've talked about this. In 2008, I hated any other box owner within a 100-mile radius, because it was like, you're taking money from my, family and food off my table. And now I realize, of course, not being in Albany, it's a little easier to be friends with you guys. But at the same time, you realize, man, when I started Albany CrossFit in 2007, this is awesome that all these years later, I have 2 women who own boxes, a woman that's met her husband and is coaching somewhere. And perhaps most impressively, I forgot to mention this in your introduction, Michelle, you were Spirit of CrossFit.
I still have my trophy.
That's an expensive trophy. I hope you still have. I remember buying those. Was that at the competition or was that at our banquet?
That was at the most epic banquet of my life.
So I've not really talked a lot about that, mostly because I don't remember it because we would just get really, really drunk. But tell me what you remember about those banquets that we used to hold. I tell boxes to do these. It's kind of like a formal or a prom, if you will. But we would give out, CrossFitter of the Year, Rookie of the Year, but also a Spirit of CrossFit, which is like someone that exemplifies what it means to be an outstanding member, bring good attitude, which you always did. But tell me what you remember about that banquet.
Honestly, not much. I just remember really fun. It was really fun to be with people not at the gym, to be able to sit down and chat with them, not having a workout or a class waiting to start. So I just remember having so much fun. And that's really where I got close to a lot of people. My best friend, Mallory, who was a bridesmaid,
I remember Mal. Yeah.
That's where her and I really connected. And that's where our friendship kind of blossomed, was at that banquet. And so it was really fun.
That's all. Yeah, I remember Mal. I remember actually, now that you say that, the 2 of you spending a lot of time together. But those formals are some of my best memories. And before, one last thing, I'm just excited to talk to you guys. But you know that Kevin is out here actually coaching at the same box I coach at now?
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's pretty crazy, right?
That's nice.
So yeah, Kevin was one of my coaches. He moved, I sold. He was all over the place. I am, and now we live, 20 minutes away, and he's coaching here at Ralston Creek CrossFit. So it's really awesome. Let's dive into this. So, Michelle, you reached out wanting to talk about pregnancy. I do, you're 17, now you're further in here. First thing I want to address is, you say you're lonely. What does that mean when it comes to working out?
So I'll chime in a little, but I Alberta and Kristen have been my rock really during this process. First, I told Alberta, I think it was Alberta, I was like, I need to tell you a secret. And then I was like, oh, cool, because I legit have the same secret that I'm about to tell you. And it was the best exchange, because when you, especially in the first trimester, when you're really not telling a lot of people, but you're not feeling well and you still want to go to the gym. And as a coach, I couldn't just not show up at the gym for 3 months because I still had to coach. And I think it would have been a little fishy at that point if I just stopped going. And you don't really know how to navigate that first trimester if you don't have a team like I did with Kristen and Alberta, because you're like, what can I do? What can I do? I'm so scared in the first trimester because I don't want anything to go wrong. And so that's what I meant by it's pretty lonely if you don't have someone that you trust. I did tell Kayla, and so she was really supportive during the process, but I wasn't comfortable telling all the other coaches just yet. And so that's why Alberta and I talked a lot about that.
Yeah, as a longtime coach and box owner, I've said this before, but I've probably been the second, or in some scenarios, the first person to know about pregnancy dozens of times. Mm-hmm. And we actually were having a conversation in my coach's development group about this, where one of the younger guys, kind of like me, Federico, give him a shout out, was like, a pregnant woman has to tell you because you can hurt the baby and blah, blah, blah for scaling. And I'm like, no, they don't. Like, they don't have to, no one has to tell you anything, an injury, or especially something like pregnancy, where the challenge is, look, if I know you as an athlete, I can tell she's doing ring rows, like, what's going on, right? But then it's like having to have that conversation and making them feel comfortable, because there is typically, and you, Kristen, and Alberta, there's typically like a time frame where I don't know if it's like there's a website for ladies only where you find out like when I can say I'm pregnant. I think it's a little at your discretion. Like for us, it was about 3 months, especially going through IVF, where you're just like, I don't want to. I think the rule is like, don't tell anyone you wouldn't feel comfortable saying, like, if something went wrong. So what's usually that time frame where women are more comfortable letting everyone know they are pregnant?
I think that varies. As from a standpoint of just the person, like what they're comfortable with. I know for me, I told people pretty quickly, but that's because I'm a spaz, and that was bad. Like, oh my God, I'm pregnant. I didn't think much about what could go wrong. But back when I was pregnant, I also wasn't doing CrossFit. So it's definitely a very different world, a different animal to share that. And I don't know what Michelle or Alberta felt because I wasn't doing CrossFit, but as someone who has been pregnant and also someone who is a healthcare provider, I know what they're feeling, their fear. They don't know. They haven't been here before. What am I going to, most importantly, will I hurt my baby? That's the one main thing that goes through their head. And Leon and I have coached quite a few pregnant athletes, and not just Leon and I, our other coaches, Rebecca, Amity, but Leon has done it for years. 10 years ago, he's been coaching pregnant women. So I think the one most important thing that when they finally feel better coming to us, and they come to us pretty quickly, is, and I know you had said, Michelle, you didn't want to tell the other coaches besides Kayla. I always recommend to them that we tell all the coaches, like just the coaches, not the athletes. We need to sit down. Everybody needs to be involved in this to keep you safe, to make sure you feel safe. If you're not comfortable telling the other coaches, let's come up with a plan then together that's going to work for you. If you don't want these people to know, you just want me to know, you just want this person to know, let's come up with a plan. Maybe you only come when I'm here, that kind of thing. Alberta, you can speak a little bit more to that too. Because you're a little bit different in the sense that you worked out at your own gym that you own.
Right.
And Alberta, how far along are you?
28 weeks.
Okay, so you're 7 months.
Yeah, just entering my third trimester now.
Third trimester.
Ooh.
Yeah, good times.
And before you go in there, I do want to say, going off what you're talking about, Kristen, members pick up on things as well.
Yeah.
And it's also navigating, this is always my big joke. It's like 3, 2, 1, go. I'm doing a 20-minute AMRAP. No one knows what you're doing. Someone walks in and they're like, come on, Jay, go harder. I'm like, dude, I got 20 minutes left in this thing. Back off. But same thing has to happen. And you as a coach, as the one that knows about this pregnancy, has to figure out that. Like,
oh, yeah.
They're tired today, or let them go a little easy. Because that person's not trying to be a jerk. They're just trying to encourage you. But it's
correct.
It's tough. So Alberta, yeah, chime in on what Kristen said there.
Yeah, so for myself personally, I told the people that I'm generally around fairly soon, because as a coach, I'm constantly demoing movement, and a big thing, like if I don't feel comfortable doing a ring muscle up anymore to demo it to you, like I want you to know why, and I want to be able to have this conversation. As an athlete, I'm just working out, so I don't really have anyone to tell, but I think everyone is going to have a different set point where they feel comfortable with telling people, and that might differ for people in their life. My close family, I told almost immediately, because of course, if something were to go wrong, those are the people, like you said, that I'm gonna want to know. But as far as like the rest of the world, we didn't really feel the need to tell. I think we probably announced it via like social media around 20 weeks, which I felt good about. But I think as the mom, you're going to know when you want people to know. And as time goes on, and I'm sure Michelle and Kristen can attest to this, you want people to know, like you get very excited. You're like, oh, I just want to tell everyone, you know? So I think it varies and you have to go by your gut. And I'm sure we'll get into this discussion further and further in this conversation, but I think a lot of this, you just have to go with your gut and trust yourself and do what's right for you.
Yeah. And ultimately at some point it's obvious, right? Like your body's changing. So I don't know you two ladies, but I'm sure with Michelle, it'll be fairly obvious all of a sudden on one day, like, you've been eating a couple of donuts, Michelle, or you're pregnant, right? And we have to have those conversations. So having been through it, Kristen, and now that you're entering your third trimester, Michelle, you're in your second, I think, right? Based on the math. Let's talk first and foremost from both perspectives, the pregnant woman, but then the coaching perspective, because this really isn't something that like there's a book out there, right? No. So for me as a coach, when a woman tells me they're pregnant, it basically becomes do what you want. Like I'm not comfortable. I know there's a handful of things you probably shouldn't do anymore, like go super heavy or get that heart rate too jacked up. But I know at different trimesters, it's like you can be on your back, you can't be on your back. So what are maybe just a few rules that you would throw out there to coaches as far as like first trimester, this is what you should be aware of, second and third? And I think, of course, if my advice would always be, it's got to be, this is the one time where it's like the athlete gets to tell you what they're doing. Not one time, but one of the times. Right. But
to a certain extent, I think a lot of them are looking for direction and they're not getting it. So the thought process behind, okay, do what you want, seems like it's a good thing in theory, but it's not, because they, just like any athlete in any time, they want somebody to tell them what to do. First trimester, half the time people don't even know they're pregnant until they're halfway or 3/4 through that anyway, so a lot of stuff really starts to gear up in those second and third trimesters. But rule of thumb, if you've been doing it all along, you can keep doing it with changes as you go. Yes, you're absolutely right, Jason, is about the heart rate thing.
Well, tell us, give us a few rules that as coaches, especially for the male coaches that have never been through this.
Yeah, it's tough.
Give me like 3 rules per trimester, if you will. Just so if it's like, hey, if you take anything from this, someone tells you they're pregnant, 12 weeks in, do this. Second trimester, do X, and third trimester. So what do you got for that, Kristen?
Michelle looked like she was going to say something.
Oh, Michelle.
Do you have a question? But yeah, clarify.
Well, I just don't think there are 3 rules. I think there's one rule. And I think that's something you talk a lot about, Jay, in your podcast, is that relationship with the athlete. There are some women that in the first trimester, second trimester, and third are crushing toes to bars. They can do kipping pull-ups. They're cool with that and they feel good doing that. Me, not so much. There's some women that are pregnant and doing yoga that will still do handstands. I don't necessarily feel totally comfortable doing that for no other reason than I just don't want to. And so I think the number one rule, I don't know if there's any rules, Kristen or Alberta, you might add per trimester. I just think it's, your relationship with that athlete is more important now than ever before. So you can understand what their priorities are.
So tell me more about that, Michelle, because had you not told me, right, you were pregnant and you're 17 weeks, 18 weeks, and you're at the box, and all of a sudden I notice, hey, Michelle typically does handstand push-ups, or Michelle usually pushes it a little harder. What are some reasons you're feeling that way? So as a coach, we might be able to identify it and empathize with a woman there.
So for me, once I told coaches, I think one of the most important things is I put out a challenge to them to do a little bit of research. And I told, there are only 3 CrossFit articles on pregnancy, and they're all from 2017. So since 2017, there's been nothing that's been published in the CrossFit Journal about pregnancy.
In fairness, I don't know that much has changed in pregnancy in the last 3 years, but I do agree. Yeah, we need to see more.
Yeah, but a lot has changed in the sport.
Very true.
And so there's an awesome chart by Nicole, is it Christensen? I don't want to get her name
Nicole
wrong.
Christensen is out here in
Yes.
Boulder. She said she has 2 children, and I know she used to work out like up until delivery.
Yeah, and so
Nicole's
that's,
great resource at
she's
CrossFit
amazing.
Roots.
And so I looked at that chart and I sent it to Alberta and I sent it to Kristen. And I think, you know, if coaches want to know what potential scaling options are out there, she's already done that work for
Great.
us as coaches.
All right, well, Katie's going to listen to this. Katie, can you find that for us and post that somewhere? She'll handle that. But that's good. I didn't even know that there was and that might be something you want to print at your box, put it up on the wall, right? Because
That's a great idea.
this is one of those few times. Injury is pretty obvious. Like, I got a cast on my arm. Okay, you can't do a barbell, right? But again, we're talking about this might be even for the members that want to come in that are pregnant and realize, oh, I shouldn't. They might not know any better. I shouldn't do this. So good.
And especially if
We'll get
they
that out
haven't felt comfortable enough to tell anybody yet. If it's there, they at least have a resource to be like, okay, I haven't worked up the courage to tell my coach yet, but I see this, you know. So that's actually a pretty great idea.
Exactly. Kind of like, you know, the mobility charts that some boxes have. Like, if this hurts, do this distraction. Same thing. More importantly, hey, you know, if you're pregnant, do this. And then I think a lot of it is, as a box owner and as the coaching staff, your style and your ability to connect with I think the reason I've heard about so many pregnancies, even back when I was young and wild and immature, I would hear about it because I think ultimately the members felt comfortable telling me that. And if you're a box owner or a coach and, hey, I've had 3 or 4 women that are pregnant, they didn't tell me till, you know, it was like, you know, 6 months in, you got to check yourself and be like, why are these people not comfortable telling me this?
Yeah.
100%.
So I love that scaling up option. Alberta, what were you going to say?
Okay. So what's crazy is that since I've started coaching full time, it's been almost a year now. I've coincidentally had at least one pregnant person that I've been working with for almost an entire year, like since the beginning, and now myself. And so I've kind of like started to map out a little bit of a blueprint, like of main tenets that I go by. So you were asking for like, you know, 3 things. And I just kind of usually have like 3 main principles, and I think that they're pretty good. And the first and most important is that your fitness level before you're pregnant is going to be directly correlated to the required dosing and intensity and things that you are going to need while you're pregnant. So a good example of this is like, if an athlete performs the workout Karen before they become pregnant in say 5 minutes.
Who's this? Who's doing that? What do you got in your box?
Well, no, I just mean anyone, like 5, 6, 7
tall
minutes.
fire breathers there.
Yeah. You know, when they get pregnant, it might not be applicable to scale the reps or weight because they still might be able to do that at a moderate intensity and still be able to complete the workout in an appropriate amount of time. So I think as a coach, you have to really be able to assess that and know the athlete in front of you.
Yes.
Secondly, you know, the CrossFit adage, like our needs vary by degree, not by kind. So just because you're pregnant doesn't mean that you don't need to advance or maintain all physical skills. They just need to be modified. So what I usually look for with athletes is just general state of confidence, like physical and emotional confidence. So if an athlete, you know, just learned how to rope climb, they're probably not going to be rope climbing very long into their pregnancy. Whereas if you have someone who's been training for 10 years and they're a rope climb aficionado, they're going to be able to perform that movement longer. And as a coach, you can look at things like their facial expression, you know, their cadence while they're performing the workout. I think it's just really important as a coach to have that eye and be really looking for those things, because that's what's really going to modify the scaling more than anything.
That's really important. So let me ask all 3 of you this. you guys are different places in your current pregnancy, or well beyond it. Help a coach empathize, especially a male coach who's never going to be experiencing this. What's it like watching kind of your fitness have to take a backseat? And then also Kristen, coming back from it. And I ask partially because, I have to deal with Roz, and I understand, like, when I first met, she's a fire breather, training hard, even, during the pandemic, pre-pregnancy, doing Peloton. Now I see her in there and she's like, okay, if I have to get off the bike to take care of Madison or, do stuff, help us empathize with you, because we can experience, like, I'm injured and that is frustrating. And I know I'm going to come back from it. And I know there are things I can do. I can still push myself hard, even with a bum leg, right? I can do pistols. I can do so many things. I can do pull-ups, where you're like, hey, for the next 9 months, if not longer, this thing I really care about has to take a backseat. What's that feel like?
So I think it's definitely a growing process. So like when I was 8, 9, 10 weeks pregnant, like I was crying to my husband every night, like, oh, I can't do what I love anymore. Like everything is falling apart. And I know that Michelle and Kristen can probably relate, or pregnant women everywhere. But I think over time, you start to accept and you start to learn. Before I was pregnant, I was, doing like hundreds of chest to bars in a workout because my goal was to qualify for a sanctional event. Now, like at 28 weeks pregnant, I'm like, God, I got to work on my ring rows because, I'm having a hard time like pulling myself up out of bed. You know what I mean? And I think that like, you learn. I mean, it's like any healing. It's like any growing. It's going to take some time. And I don't think anyone gets pregnant and they're automatically able to accept that things are going to change. It just takes time,
I don't think you accept it through the entire thing. You don't even accept it when the baby's born and your entire life changes. It's like something you don't even understand until you actually do it. And it's fun watching both of them go through the process. I knew about them both being pregnant. They didn't know about each other. We started talking about this whole thing, and I'm the one who's like, I need to figure out how to tell these two that they're both pregnant so they can talk to each other about it, because I knew you two would totally need each other, and this would work out. But it's
in high school when your two friends like each other, but you don't want to say, like, hey, you should talk to this person.
Yeah. And like, I mean, I'm just going to throw it out there. I have teenagers. My daughters are 17 and 15. So I'm years past all of this stage of it. So I'm the guru or whatever, the healthcare person, the one you call and say, I've gained too much weight during pregnancy. No, Michelle, you're growing a human. You've gained the right amount of weight. You're doing great, and but those are those things, like you're so used to, I know how much I'm eating, my macros, my quality. I can do this many handstand, and all of that just sort of starts to take a back seat, because you start to realize that your body's doing something way more amazing than how many damn toast bar you can do in a workout. But it takes you a really long time to get there. I'll be honest with you, this year I wasn't going to do the open because my shoulder was hurting. I ended up getting it's fixed now. You know why I did it? My 7-month pregnant athlete signed up for the open. I'm like, well, if she can do it, everyone can do it. And she was the most excited about it. She was the one there every day first, ready to do her workout. And I'm like, Jess, what's up? She's like, it's just something that makes me feel like I'm still a part of things.
Yeah. I mean, we recently had a 65-plus-year-old games athlete, Dave Hippensteel, on, and he said, CrossFit gave him like a third wind in life, because you have that competition. And, part of that is individually based. If you are injured or pregnant, are you still, are those competitive juices still flowing? But at least CrossFit gives you the option to allow them to flow. And I've often told people, whether it is pregnancy or a bum shoulder, until you're hurt and you still do CrossFit, you're not really a CrossFitter. Because if you only train on the days you feel 100%, you're going to stop training, especially once you have a baby. I mean, you're not going to feel 100%. And then, I want to hear Michelle's side, but I also, you were doing CrossFit 17, 15 years ago, Kristen. But now, Roz and I having the conversation is also, okay, I'm ready to come back, but we are going to have another, like, how do I find the motivation to go hard again, knowing I may have to deal with this pregnancy thing again? It's like, if your shoulders hurt and it feels better, but knowing it's going to get hurt again in a year, how hard are you going to push your body? So also navigating those conversations with someone like, hey, I get it, you're back. What's your goal in life? What's your family? Are you going to have a second, a third, a fourth child? What do we want to do in the interim?
Yeah.
So what about you, Michelle?
For me, it's been really difficult to manage expectations. That's just the simplest way to put it. The open was tough. I called Kristen and texted Alberta, hysterically crying after the repeat, right? Because we did the 21.2 was a repeat. And I'm like, I'm stronger, I'm faster now. And I didn't meet my expectation, and I cried for an entire weekend. I hyperventilated in my car. Like, it was such a disaster. And I had to it took me like a full week to realize that my goals are different. And I think, Alberta said it best when we first, all three of us connected, is we're redefining what functional fitness means. And I wasn't ready to redefine that. As much as I told myself I wasn't. And I wanted to be that 2017 version of me that could finish a workout. But I did the workout with another human in my body, with trying not to, have my heart rate go crazy. And I think after that workout, you want a red line so bad, because that's what they teach us in CrossFit. Like, fucking go, man. Like, you're tired, get up on the bar. But that's not me right now. And it's so hard to accept that. And so for coaches, if you know an athlete is pregnant, I think coaches at our gym do a great job of walking up to me like, how you doing? Good. Take a breath. Go when you're ready. And that's what we're doing right now. I'm going when I'm ready. So it's quite the journey. Lots of tears. But it's hard to manage those expectations at first.
So what was the moment where you realized, okay, I need to accept where I'm at right now? Was it mid 21.2, or was it after?
Are we there yet?
I don't know if we're there yet.
I didn't think.
or are you not there yet, I suppose?
Alberta's there.
Sure. I think it's hard when the reason it was difficult was because it was a retest, right? When you go into CrossFit, a lot of times we never do these workouts ever again. So I'm like, all right, let me get through this workout. Let me get the intended stimulus. Let me work hard. Let me scale the weight so I can meet the time domain. But when it's a repeat, I feel like that's when the pressure is on. So when 21.2 came up and it was the snatches, box jumps workout that I so badly wanted to finish and I didn't, I think that's when it's hard to accept it. So I think I've accepted it now, but who knows? Maybe another repeat will come up and I'll call you crying this time, Jay.
I'll be here. I was crying. I wasn't pregnant and I was crying during that workout. Just like, hey, I had to tell myself a similar story. You have a newborn, you're tired, things have changed since 2017.
Indeed.
My goal was like, hey, this time all you have to do is finish it. And 10 seconds I think I had left. But I think you have to kind of set new goals and standards and ideals for what you're doing. I think as you're saying that, part of the challenge is, when I think about pregnant CrossFitters, I have two that come to mind, obviously a third with Roz, but I have a friend out here, her name's Jennifer Floyd. She's a monster, had 4 kids, worked out till like the last day, looked fit, back almost immediately every time. And then there's this other woman, Heather Bergeron, who I've known for a long time, and back when she would travel to Albany or I would see her in Benmore, oftentimes she was pregnant, and my only basing my knowledge of pregnancy and CrossFit on those two, you're like, cool, no big deal, do your thing, right? So for our perspective, it's like understanding that's not the norm. No different than the fire breathers are not the norm at your box. So understanding, hey, most women that are pregnant are not going to be working out at 100% anymore. And that's, goes back to your statement of like, there's just not enough information out there yet. Even Nicole, Nicole Christensen, I remember this must be 5 years ago, we're at the games. She's running around doing her thing, working like 9 months pregnant.
Yeah. I think too, Heather Bergeron, she has a lot of blogs from back when she was pregnant with Bodhi and Harley. And she's pretty frank about, she had a miscarriage and she had a whole talk about it. And so she really, when she got pregnant with Bodhi, I read her blog, like soup to nuts back then, scaled down. So like she went strict. As soon as she found out she was pregnant, her movements went strict. So that's something that I recommend a lot to people. Like, like when you were saying people are banging out toes to bar till the end, I'm like, how? How are you not getting like to right here? And do you need to be doing that? And there are, I speak to, if you were doing it before, you can keep doing it to a certain extent. There are a lot of things like climbing that rope. Would I recommend my athletes climb that rope? No, maybe halfway. But if you're the risk to fall scares me more than anything. Not that they can't do it. That what if they slip and fall? You're putting certain things in danger that don't need to be. Now, at the end of the day, if my athlete who's an RX fire breather looks at me and says, "I'm going to climb that rope," then you're going to climb that rope. I can only recommend to you, what I think you should do. Most of them listen. Things that you need to do everywhere, no matter what trimester you're in: warm up, stretch, cool down, eat properly, and avoid overheating. That's everybody all the time, but most people don't do those things. Let's be honest. Like we're constantly drilling that stuff into people's heads, but you're pregnant people. These are non-negotiables. They have to be doing these things to a certain extent. Like really, recovery is more important than anything right now as you're growing as human.
And obviously, a lot of these things take a priority in pregnancy, but I also think, as I'm hearing a lot of this, it's really doesn't matter. Male, female, pregnant, not pregnant, be smart.
Yeah.
You don't have an injury when you're pregnant, but you definitely have another life factor happening. You need to be smart. And something you just touched upon that we should talk more about is nutrition.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Perhaps the most underutilized coaching tool in most boxes, whether you're pregnant or you're just coming in for the first time. We've heard there's tons of cliches, whether it's 80% of what you do is happening in the kitchen, or you can't work out a crappy diet. But what are some of the ways you can navigate that with a pregnant woman?
I feel like I'm talking a lot. Anybody else want to hop in?
I'll just mention a quick thing, and I think Alberta has, I actually have gone to Alberta a lot about this too. First, as always, make sure you're talking to your OB, because your doctor and your team, your medical team, just to make sure that you are doing what's right for you. Unfortunately, though, a lot of our medical professionals that work with pregnant women, they generalize a lot of things that don't fit with what we do on a daily basis, and that can be frustrating. So for nutrition, what I've learned is if you're hungry, just eat. And you have to fuel your body. And I know that's so simple, but as someone that has done every diet on this planet, the macros, Whole30, paleo, literally everything, it's a little bit difficult for people like that to let go of that strict regimen and just be conscious, just like we, in CrossFit, fruits and vegetables, meats, so on and so forth. So I'll let Alberta talk, because she definitely gave me lots of great advice when I was like, what do I eat?
Michelle, what's one thing you've eaten since you've been pregnant that you may have avoided, but you're like, screw it, I'm pregnant?
Nothing extreme, but like if there's a slice of pizza in the fridge that Greg has for himself for later, I'm like,
no,
I'm taking it. So I don't restrict myself as much as I used to, but I am trying to obviously eat normal. I'm trying to change my diet completely.
Yeah, you still want to eat healthy, but you also realize, hey, I'm growing. That was a fun part for me. I think I've developed like a fetish. When I watched Roz eat more, I was like, oh, this is kind of a turn on watching Roz eat more, because it's just fun to be like, hey, that's cool that you're doing that and you see that and you're allowing it to happen. And even now, she still eats a little more than she used to. She tracks, but I think you still have to give yourself that leniency. You're nursing.
I was just going to say, if she's nursing, definitely. Actually, more
Yeah.
so nursing than when pregnant. You need more calories when you're nursing than you do when you're pregnant.
Absolutely.
Not significantly more, but it's like 300 more, something along those lines.
Yeah. Well, when she was pregnant, she was certainly eating a little bit more, but now with nursing and Madison's like 9 weeks, she's definitely still a little bit more flexible with her flexible eating. So Alberta, what were you going to chime in there?
So all I was going to say is I think that a lot of times this ends up becoming a lot more complicated than it needs to be. And it certainly was for me when I was in the beginning of my pregnancy and, talking with Michelle about this, as time has gone on, everyone's going to have a different story and a different path. But for myself, I was, tracking my food and, eating kind of like towards somebody who CrossFits a lot. And then, becoming pregnant, it's kind of like, oh my God, like, what do I do? I have all these crazy hormones. I'm starving. I'm craving carbohydrates, but my activity level is lower. So how does that affect my macros and yada, yada, yada. And as you can imagine, it's kind of like a mental and emotional roller coaster. But like Michelle said, it really doesn't need to be. I think if you just eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full or when you're 80% full. These are, basic, a lot of people call it like intuitive eating guidelines, if that's what you want to call it. But always just prioritizing whole foods is the key. I think when you're pregnant, you have a lot of cravings. Like for myself, I had serious carb cravings. It was carbs through the whole first trimester. But I think that as long as you're just giving yourself a little bit of grace, there's nothing wrong with having pizza and having, a serving of vegetables with it too. It doesn't need to be all or nothing. There's so many shades of gray here. And I think that people want to, make it all crazy and complex, but it really is just simple. Meat and vegetables, nuts and seeds, some fruit, little starch, no sugar. Just do your best. That's all it takes.
Literally.
And what about when a woman like you, third trimester, Michelle, and the coaches know, and you come in and you're like, I blew my diet, like I had too much. Like, how would you recommend coaches handle that?
I'm somebody who is very much with my athletes. I'm an holistic nutritionist as well. So obviously my focus is definitely more towards the quality, the intuitive part of eating. Not to say that I don't think people should count macros. They have their place everywhere, and some people do great on them. But the blowing of the diet. So to me, it's always like, all right, that's just like one meal. Who cares? Let's let that go. Let's move on to the next meal. And then we'll just talk about like, what did you have? All right, no big deal. Let's have this for breakfast tomorrow, or eat this after your workout. And that doesn't even matter. Your body will use that. It's gone, and just sort of like make them realize it's not that big of a deal. Pregnant or not, that's the kind of conversation I have with all my athletes, because that mentality is very deep in people. The whole, I blew my diet, I might as well keep going, and it's just like, no. So that's the conversation that coaches really need to remember, is just like one meal doesn't make or break us ever.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, Jay, that's a very sensitive topic depending on who you're talking to. If it depends, again, it has to come back to your relationship with that athlete. I'll give you, a personal example. I struggled with eating disorders for such a long freaking time. And so that's why I'm still, even now, I'm like in therapy to try to navigate this thing, because I'm gaining weight. And society tells you gaining weight is bad, but right now gaining weight is so good. It's so important. It means I'm on track. And so if an athlete comes to you and you know that they are those ones that are just, there's absolutely no flexibility because they struggle with these certain issues, sometimes they just need that comfort. Sometimes they need to hear like, all right, good for you. You ate a Reese's peanut butter cup. Like, we're good, girl. Like, I'll do some 5 burpees with you. Done. We burned them. And so it depends on the athlete. It depends on who they are. And again, I think one thing our coaches do really well is, and Kayla does this really well with me, is why do you feel that way? Tell me a little bit more about like why you're feeling this way. And, my best therapists have been my coaches. And so again, if someone comes in and say, I blew my diet, before we start figuring out what happened, just figure out why they're feeling that way in the first place. Because it may not, again, like Kristen said, 100% of the time, it's really not that big of a deal. We're fine.
I gotta be honest, like when you're pregnant, at least, it's almost like the notion of like, I blew my diet is really only acceptable when you didn't eat at all.
Yeah.
And I think that like I've had days where I've gone out in the gym and I'm definitely undernourished and I know it, and I start and I'm like, dang it, like I screwed up, I made a mistake. And when you're pregnant, you just have to eat. You have to eat and you have to drink water, and there's no getting around it. You're gonna gain weight. It's physiology. That's how it works. And so it just is what it is,
Well, I really love what Michelle said in that, like, my best therapists are my coaches. And I think part of what I'm hearing is, yes, you need to treat pregnant women a little more cautiously, but really you need to treat all of your members like this. Just know that this demographic is pregnant versus, it's almost easier because it is binary. Like, I'm pregnant versus I'm having a bad day.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I think we want to remove the stigma of it. I think there's a giant fear for coaches around athletes that are pregnant out there. I think there's like, I do believe that to be my experience seeing it in other gyms as well. I'm not saying everyone. I think there's a lot of great coaches out there that can handle it well, but I think we need to, I don't know, throw it in the L1 somewhere. Hey, you're going to have pregnant athletes. Let's have a 20-minute conversation about that maybe, because coaches deal with a lot. And I didn't realize how much until I became one. I'm like, holy crap.
And I think this is important. It's something we talk about a lot in Affiliate U and our coaches development program. But if you're listening to this and you don't want to do that, this is probably not the career path for you.
No.
You need to want to be someone's therapist just as badly as you want to get them below parallel.
Exactly.
I can't even I think back to when I had like just my level 1 and I was just starting coaching, group classes, and I had pregnant people in the class, and I'm like remembering back on like the things that I said, like, don't do this, like do this, or like you said in the beginning, do whatever you want, and it really wasn't until I did start studying for my level 3 that I kind of was looking at, I'm pregnant, I'm studying for this test, and I'm realizing like, oh my God, like this is CrossFit. We need to be doing CrossFit appropriately, scaled appropriately. It's no different. It doesn't matter. And good coaching and good scaling and stuff is important. It's the only important thing. But it doesn't change what we need. We need CrossFit.
Right.
So before we wrap up, then let's talk about a few things. What are, you're a box owner, Kristen, Alberta, you as well, Michelle, you've been coaching and you're a doctor, right? You have your PhD in leadership. What are some things that you would recommend, maybe speak more to the men, but I mean, there are some unempathetic women as well, because I don't really have it. We talk about it a lot in our group, and when Michelle joked earlier that I've matured, I think that's probably where I've matured the most. And I was on Nicola Coyne's podcast, Healthy Steps Nutrition, and she said, what led to that? And I said, marriage. Like, there's no amount of coaching or research you can do to gain empathy other than living with another human being and realizing their opinion is just as important as mine. So what are some things you would encourage your coaching staff to do, or as a leader, Michelle, you would tell people to do to develop empathy? Read Brene Brown. Cool. We get it. Check. Now what?
I think for just specifically for male coaches that have pregnant women in their gym, I'll tell you a quick story that I think really encompasses what this empathy is. And I don't even think this particular person knows that I felt such comfort in that. So I was working out outside, I was rowing, and one of the coaches, he's a newer coach at our gym, I'll say his name's Joel, and he was rowing next to me, and he looked over to me while I was resting. He's like, hey, I'm just curious, I was reading about pregnancy and heart rate, and I'm wondering, where do you usually like to keep your heart rate now that you're kind of going through this, exciting thing? And I told him, and it was really a very quick interaction. But that made me feel so safe to know that there is a man, along with all of our other coaches at the gym, that's thinking about, okay, where does Michelle want to keep her heart rate? And I'm going to keep that number tapped in the back of my mind. So when I see her breathing a little too heavy, we have an actual number we can reference. And so truly, little things like that, asking questions, it goes a really long way.
I think that's great, and something we talk about a lot from our buddy Chuck Carswell is that idea of ask one more question. We always tell people that. And, one of the guidelines we have is if you don't know someone's Ford, family, occupation, recreation, and dream, you have unlimited amount of questions. But certainly and that's something I struggle with, to the point that I have clients and I'm always like, we wrap up a conversation, one more question, which leads into a whole nother, hour discussion. But yeah, as coaches, obviously this guy knew you were pregnant, but whether you're pregnant or not, I think sometimes we see people clearly having a stressful or bad day, and our gut is like, go. And rather than being like, hey, what's going on today? What's up? You don't seem yourself, right? Can I help you? And I also need, the caveat to that is not telling them, hey, you look tired, you look stressed. That's a pet peeve of mine, right? You look shitty today. You want to scale more, right? So I like that. But certainly with a pregnant person, hey, where can I help you the most today?
Exactly. And just to touch on that, from the healthcare provider standpoint, when I'm working with my patients and any good healthcare provider, you're not telling them what to do. You're building it with them. Yes. So any health, fitness, whatever your goal is, it's like, this is my recommendation. How do you feel about it? Right. Okay. So we're going to start doing ring rows instead of this. How do you feel about that? Well, I think I can still do this for a little longer, but I'm willing to do the ring rows as we go. They still feel a part of the journey. And you are still leading them based on your, mad knowledge. There's a lot of knowledge on this screen, years of not just coaching, but athleticism. And, so we have to make sure that we aren't just telling them what to do. We're working with them as they go through it.
I think that goes for a lot of people. Just, I was joking with one of our clients. I'm like, the answer, but you have to make that person feel like they came up with the answer.
Absolutely.
And that's a big part of it as well. Like, hey, I was thinking, ring rows. Oh no, I want to do band and pull. Cool.
All right.
That was my second.
All right.
And what about you, Alberta? How would you encourage empathy and teach empathy?
I think kind of similarly to what the other two said, is just talk and ask questions. I think it's kind of been displayed as this uncomfortable topic that women don't want to talk about. But if you're pregnant, you want to talk about being pregnant, and you want to talk about how you feel. And I think if you're a coach, a male coach, a female coach who hasn't been pregnant or hasn't trained pregnant clients before, ask questions, ask them how they're feeling, ask them, how does this movement feel? I just think that you can learn so much from learning what other people have gone through. For me personally, like I'm asking all of the women in my life who have been pregnant, like, you know, when did you have to stop running? Like, when did you have to stop doing box jumps? I'm kind of feeling that way now. And those conversations generally lead to the highest level of enlightenment. So I just think, I guess I would just say ask questions and be communicative.
Yeah.
I think pregnancy may be one of those few times that men are a little more empathetic than women. I don't know if that's the case, but I feel like
you're right. No, you're right. I agree with that 100%. I think it's just because you genuinely know you're never going to know what it feels like. So you kind of got to get as empathetic as you possibly can.
Yeah, you can be like, hey, I hurt my shoulder. I'm like, cool, so did I.
Yeah.
Right? And you're like, but I'm pregnant. And I'm like, oh shit, okay.
All right, yeah, I can't do that.
And I'll tell you, like I said earlier, like even more so, Roz is the strongest woman I know, like crazy, like stupid strong, you know. You could argue it's stubborn, but I don't want to say that on the podcast. But you know, and seeing some of the emotional challenges that she went through with nutrition, with letting herself go, and even now getting back into it, and all while being sleep deprived, which is a whole week. We need to have a second conversation.
I was just gonna say we should meet up again and like
let's check back in like 6 months.
Yeah, this is really my therapy. I didn't want to tell you guys, but now you know it gives me a better. You know, I tell. Not that I would recommend this, but I've said things like, "You're pregnant and you're crazy right now." So I'm gonna let that go. but just know.
And you're still here. You're still alive.
Yeah. She let that one go. I forget what it was, but I was. And now internally, I'm like, she's not slept. Like she's tired.
Yeah.
She's got this, you know, this baby latched to her boob for the last, 9 weeks.
I think something that I want the pregnant women to know, just like as an aside, is enjoy this, ladies, and any pregnant women that are going to be listening to this. Enjoy this, because this is actually the best part. The real hard shit starts real soon. and then because you're not pregnant anymore and you want to get back into it, but your body is still it's healing, and it heals for a long time. And then, like you said, you have a baby attached to you, and it's like, whoa. So really enjoy this.
And seeing that, like I was like, okay, she had her baby, our baby, yes, like tearing, whatever. Like she needed to take a couple days, weeks. And then I was like, you ready to get back in? She's like, no, are you ready? And it was like just last week, 8 weeks later. And this is someone who I could tell is itching to do it. But just, I mean, watching the transition, I'm sure we'll see it with you two as well, of Roz, you know, my girlfriend, fiance, wife to mom has been like so awesome to see. Like, I'm like, I love the baby, but I'm also like, cool, you take her, right? Like, I gotta go work. And Roz is like so caring. It's crazy. Like, it's truly like
different.
There's some weird shit in women that men don't have quite the same when that baby pops out.
And that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah. And I delivered the baby. Everybody, I don't know if you saw the pictures. Everybody's like, why are you naked? I wasn't naked. I had my shirt off. It was Roz's leg. My shirt was off, but the baby, you'll see, Michelle, that baby comes out dirty. That baby does not come out clean. And I was just like, I was actually, funny enough, wearing my CrossFit Roots shirt. I remember that. And I was like, I don't want to get this shirt dirty. So it was fun, but it's so impressive. I mean, and that's, again, at 42 versus 22, years ago, understanding that. And for a lot of coaches, I think, the big summary is be empathetic, ask questions, have some sort of plan, which we'll put out there from what you guys talked about with Nicole's scaling options. Maybe put it out there for when someone's not comfortable telling you. But really, there's nothing that we discussed that you shouldn't do to every single person that walks into your gym.
Right.
Which speaks to pregnancy isn't a disease state. It's just a little bit of a change that we have to be aware of. Yeah.
And I mean, we've had Alex Zirkenbach, who runs the Adaptive Training Academy, talk about the difference between adapting and scaling. This is technically, I would say, I'd have to ask him, but it's probably adapting because it's longer term, right? There's probably a cutoff, but, make those people, that was a big eye opener to me. I was coaching in Florida, and there's this woman, Sherry, very fit woman, was making the qualifiers for her age group, and her shoulder was always hurting. And when I it's, permanent injury. And when I reframed it to, hey, we're adapting, that made a huge impact. She's like, I felt so shitty for so long because I'm scaling. Meanwhile, I'm fitter than most people in this gym. But because her bum shoulder, we always had to change things. So sometimes it's just a simple, semantics, but it matters. But it matters.
Yeah.
All right, let me give you all an opportunity to say one more thing. And also, please, Katie will get the notes, but your email or whatever you're comfortable giving out, because I hope from this, one of them, one of you connected with someone, whether they're pregnant or even just a coach, 2 box owners, spirit of the game, Albany CrossFit Award, perhaps the most prestigious thing that's ever been on the show. So let's start with Michelle. Anything you want to add about pregnancy, what you've learned? Take your time, and then of course where people can find you on the internet.
On the internet. So I think the first, Jay, thank you for the opportunity for this discussion, and I just want to thank everyone that's listening to this. I think it's important for us to talk about it. The number one thing I can say to women is you need a team, and don't be afraid to rely on that team. If it weren't for Alberta and Kristen, I really don't know how I would have emotionally managed that first trimester. And so don't be afraid to tell people. Sometimes it is a little bit more comfortable telling people that know what you're going through, especially in the gym. And so if anyone wants to reach out and talk about baby things, I would love that, especially if you know a good bra, since my boobs are like 4 times the size.
Oh, Roz can, first of all, let me say, not first of all, but let me say, it's pretty amazing how boobs go from like, I can't wait to touch those things to put them away. Like, those are doing nothing for me anymore, especially now that I've seen milk come out of them. I've seen Madison nonstop on them, and they're big still. I'm like, I should be enjoying this moment, but you've ruined it for me, ladies. So, but she's got all sorts of crazy bras that unstrap in weird spots now.
Unless it's bras then. But
yeah, so let me message her. She'll be happy to share that with you.
Absolutely. But I am on the gram, so it's at MIIICH_MJ. We'll post that somewhere.
Yeah, Katie will find you guys and tag you guys. She's the best.
Oh, perfect.
She's actually getting married in a couple of weeks, Katie. So
congratulations.
Yeah.
So have your team, and don't be afraid to talk about it. You're not going crazy. Everything you're feeling is valid, and lean on your support system, I think, is the biggest takeaways for me so far, and I still got a ways to go.
Cool. And and I will say, your husband and and Alberta, I'm not sure your situation, but they need people to reach out to as well.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That was so not men still have we play an active role in this thing. So if husbands need to reach out, they can reach out to me. I'll tell you what I've said that got me in trouble and not to do. What about you, Kristen?
I think obviously from my standpoint, being pregnant was quite a long time ago. It's not something that's in the cards for me anymore. But it's something that I enjoy being a part of as a healthcare provider, as a coach. And so, just feel free to reach out to me. Obviously, if you're local, if you're far away, I'm sure you have a great healthcare provider who's working through things. You don't necessarily need an OBGYN. Your primary can do all of the same things up to not obviously delivering, but they can work you through many months of your pregnancy and in cahoots with your OBGYN. So, build a team. Like Michelle said, it's not just one person making a decision. You have OBGYN, you have a primary, you have nutritionists, you have your coaches, you have other athletes in the gym, and continue to communicate with those people. That is like the gem of everything, is communication.
And where can people find you?
I'm on Instagram. It's Chris10RN, but I don't know where the underscore is. It's Chris10, I think, _RN.
Anybody can find anybody these days, and you're also
you really can.
Lumberjack Athletics.
Right there. You could Lumberjack Athletics as well. Definitely, we, as every gym in here, we're all here to help make the world a healthier place. And I think, speaking to you earlier when you said, gyms used to get angry when you would intermingle and people, I don't think it's like that anymore. I think we all have a similar goal. We all want everyone to be healthy and get to that place. So,
well, you'd be surprised.
Well, at least in our area, I think we've gotten a lot better about that, at least from our end. But maybe, I'm seeing things through some rose-colored glasses or something.
No,
but
I think in general,
find a
there's the
team.
abundance mentality, but it's I like to think I help that in Albany. But
yeah, you go.
Find a team.
Yeah, exactly.
And what do you got there, Alberta?
So I guess I would just close it out by saying that pregnancy is such a dynamic situation, and it's changing every day. I mean, for me now, every day is different, with different challenges and different opportunities, but it is the perfect time, like no other, to work on a growth mindset. Taking every challenge as an opportunity to learn something about yourself, learn something about your body, learn something about pregnancy, and use that knowledge for the future. It's so important. It'll help you, in your training through pregnancy, postpartum, and then as a mother as well. So, just work on having that growth mindset, keep it positive, because it ultimately is all positive. And then if you want to find me, I'm at Alberta Caponera, or for Barn Fit, it is at barn_fit.
Awesome. Yeah. And, as the only man on this call, I can tell you it's pretty awesome once that baby comes out. It's still weird at times. I'm like, this thing looks like me. She's this part of my team. Like it's really it's fun. And I think to me the most fun part is I'm someone who likes to be productive, and I like to always be growth, reading, etc. And it's fun to be like, can't do that. This thing needs me, but realizing at the same time, this is growth. This is productive. This is more important than anything else you were going to do. And as a 42-year-old selfish man, it takes a little, 8-pound baby girl to help you realize that. So remember that even for the coaches, how important this is. And I think that was something I often had to say to Roz, I know it, even now, nursing and everything, it's I know this is hard, but you have a healthy baby, and what is there that's more important to this? You miss a workout, you miss this, it's all good. Remind your clients and your women of that. But we will have you back on. That was great. I would love to do maybe end of the 3rd trimester when you're there, Alberta, and then after the baby, and then repeat with Michelle, and let's keep it going, because I hope this is helpful to a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that's a great
100%.
idea. Yeah.
Love it. Thank you, Jay.
Cool. Well, you guys,
awesome.
Great chatting with you. We will have you back on. Katie will handle all the details, and best of luck. Go eat that pizza. Go get that workout in.
Yep.
and have a great rest of your day.
Take
Thank
care,
you.
everybody.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.
So you never miss an episode of the podcast, subscribe to our YouTube channel and on all major podcasting platforms at Best Hour of Their Day. Thank you so much for tuning in and for being a part of the best hour of our day. See you next time.